The unconditional love of God and how it never runs out on us. He's the greatest parent of all. And this morning our goal is just simply, God, we want to be more like you as a parent. And when you think about what he did when he gave you children, it's like God was saying, I want to get the faith, I want to get the knowledge of me and my love to the next generation. So it's as if we kind of come and God says, I'm going to give you the responsibility and the privilege of bridging the gap between God. You know me, parents. You got to teach the next generation. You got to pass on this faith. You got to instill in them. And they tell us that a child's first concept of God comes from parents, especially the father. So with that, I ask the parents in the room, what does God look like to your children? Are you given a good picture of who he is and what he's all about? Because you know what? In God's plan, whether we think it was wise or not, God is never unwise. God never makes a mistake. He ordained that you be the one thing keeping the next generation in touch with him. As if to say, the faith that we have enjoyed, the gospel that we've enjoyed that's changed our life, he's given to us to pass on. So when you think about it that way, God has honored us. He considered us worthy to represent him to our children. So the greatest way you can serve your children is just be like God. I know some of you immediately check out and you say, oh man, I'm already out. No, you're not. You're closer than you think. We started off this series talking about how wives are to serve their husband, and that looks like respect. And then further down in Ephesians 5, we talked about husbands loving their wife. They serve the wife. What does that look like? Love, unconditional love. And then we talked about children serving parents. That looks like honor and obey. And today, the other way, parents, serve your children. That looks like God. It looks like this perfect picture that we're going to see in Ephesians chapter 6 to show the gravity of this moment. You've seen this illustration. I've used it before, but it's so graphic. It's just one that gives me a sober reminder of what God has given me as a parent. This is my career. This is your career. This is your business. This is your life. Other than a parent, you miss a meeting or two, you lose a sales thing, you just kind of mess up, and maybe even you lose your job. Well, you know what? It'll bounce back. There are many of you that have changed careers. Many of you have ended one job and you've started another. It's an amazing thing about careers and business. It has a way of bouncing back. But you drop this. This is your family. This is your career. Careers bounce. Families don't. They shatter. And so what you're left with are the pieces. And some of you know exactly what I mean because you've lived in that. And I want to give you a little hope because your thought is, well, I know exactly what this is, and what can I do? I've tried to put the pieces back together. In fact, you can spend a long time trying to put them back together, and you can't do it. There's only one. All the king's horses and all the king's men. They couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But we know someone who can. And the very fact you're in here this morning is a great step. The fact that you're listening is a great step in the right direction to say, you know what? I can't do this, but God can. Maybe you say, well, I haven't dropped it. My family's not shattered, but I just need to hold on to it a little harder because it could. And so the call to all of us is simply, what is it that God calls us to do as parents? Now, the funny part of being a parent is we experience things together and we can laugh about them. Here's a great test. There's a lot of young couples in here that are thinking about, one day having children, becoming a parent. Here's a little test if you want to do this at home to see how well you're going to do as a parent. For for all of you. Obtain a 55-gallon box of Legos. And if you can't get Legos, use roofing tacks or broken glass. You need to have a friend spread them all through your house and then blindfold yourself and then walk through the house to try to find the bathroom in the middle of the night. You can't scream because you'll wake the children. If you're successful, then you're ready as a parent. Now, guys, what you need to do is this. Go to the nearest drugstore, set your wallet on the counter, and tell the clerk to help himself. And then go to the grocery store and arrange for your paycheck to be directly deposited to the store. Go get you a newspaper, go home and read it in peace, because it'll be the last time you get to read it in peace. Ladies, to prepare you, get a large beanbag chair. Attach it to your clothing in the front. Wear it for 9 months. At the end of that 9 months, take out 10% of the beans. You know what I mean. You understand. I just think no matter how much you prepare, there is no preparation. You can read the books on parenting, you can go to the classes, and we got some great ones. But there's something about it that it happens and you're in it and you're saying, God, what do I do? What do I do? And I tell you, especially when we turn into teenagers. I remember the season of my life as a teenager. It was not a good season. I ran across this blog and I thought it was so cool. Somebody wrote this from a parent's perspective of what happens when their dog turns into a cat. So to the dog owners and the cat owners, you'll appreciate this. When your children are small, they're dogs, they're loyal, they're affectionate. But when they become teenagers, something happens. It's easy to be a dog owner. You feed it, train it, boss it around. It puts its head on your knees and gazes at you as if you were a Rembrandt painting. It bounds indoors with enthusiasm, as you call it. And then something happens. Those teenage years come and your adorable little puppy turns into a big old cat. When you tell it to come inside, it looks amazed, wondering who died and made you the emperor. Instead of following you everywhere, it disappears and you won't see it again till it's hungry. And then when it does sprint its way into the kitchen to eat what you've given it, it turns its nose up. When you reach out to ruffle its head in that old affectionate gesture, it twists away from you and gives you this blank stare as if it's trying to remember, have I seen you before? Not realizing the dog is now a cat, you think something's desperately wrong with it. It seems so antisocial, so distant, sort of depressed. It won't go on family outings. And since you're the one who raised it and taught it to fetch and stay and sit on command, you assume you did something wrong. So you're flooded with guilt and fear, and you redouble your efforts. Only now you're dealing with a cat, not a dog. And so everything that worked before produces the opposite result. Call it, it runs away. Tell it to sit, it jumps on the counter. The more you go toward it, the more it moves away. You got to quit acting like a dog owner, and you have to behave like a cat owner. You got to put a dish of food near the door, let it come to you. Remember that a cat needs your help and affection too. Sit still. It will come, seeking the warmth, comfortable lap that it has not entirely forgotten. Be there to open the door for it when it does. And one day, it'll walk into the kitchen and say, hey, I know you've had a long day. Can I get something for you? And then you'll realize your cat is a dog again. I remember those years. And I remember distinctly going, what am I doing wrong? And then the Lord reminded me of my teenage years. So the struggle of a parent is this. It changes. There are phases of our children's lives. And for those of you who have little ones, listen, I long for the day where I know where they are. They're in a carrier. They're in a crib. They can't go anywhere. Because one day they'll go off to college and you wonder where they are. And you wish for the days you could hold them in your arms and protect them every moment and watch over them with every breath. So there are phases. And we have to get ready for those phases and adjust and adapt to those phases. Someone said last night in such a graphic way, you know, when your children are little, they sit on your knee. When they grow up, they sit on your heart. And they really do. But as you grow with them, you learn things from them. One father wrote this. These are the things he said I really learned from my kids. It's more fun to color outside the lines. I would agree. He said you ought to ask why till you understand. What else did I learn from my kids? If you want a kitten, start out by asking for a horse. That works every time. It's a great principle in life. If your dog doesn't like somebody, you probably shouldn't either. Toads are ugly. No, they're not. They're just toads. You shouldn't ask to start over just because you're losing the game. I'm guilty. Very guilty. And the last thing he learned from his kids, chasing the cat is more fun than actually catching the cat. So there are things all along the way that you learn. And here's what I think is the greatest lesson. The longer you parent, the more you realize I need him. The greatest parent of all. And today it's real simple. I want us all to be better parents as we become more like him. Because if you want to know how to do it, just watch him. The Father. He did it. He calls himself a parent in the scripture. And he gives us today just one verse. Just one verse. In Ephesians chapter 6, if you've got your Bible, open it there and you can place your listening guide right beside it. In Ephesians chapter 6, there's just one verse. He starts with the wives and then he moves to husband and then children. And now I'm in verse 4, chapter 6. Fathers, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you, that ought to be, write the word parents above that because it is the word pateros in Greek. That word can be father, but it also can mean both parents. And I think in this one, just like in Hebrews, when that word is used and it's translated parents, I think it ought to be parents. So write the word parents. Parents, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. There it is, one verse. And we're going to stay right there. There are principles all over the scripture. This could be a whole series on parenting, but there's one verse in the context of Paul's instructions to the church and to the people there in Ephesus, and I think it is worthy of a closer look. Fathers, mothers, first of all, the negative. Don't provoke to anger. Now, what in the world is that? The word provoke is only used one other place in Scripture. So what in the world is he saying to us that we shouldn't do? Well, let me give you the context, the backdrop. In the Roman culture, children were property. Did you know that the way a child was kept or not kept, this is how it happened. They would bring the baby when it was just born. They would lay it at the feet of the father. There is actually a Roman law, patria potestas, that verifies exactly what I'm telling you. They bring the baby to the father. They lay it on the ground. If the father reaches over and picks the baby up, they keep it. But if the father walks away, the baby is taken away. They would often take them down to the Forum, the Roman Forum. If you've ever seen any pictures or you've been to Rome, you've seen some of the ruins of the Forum. They would take children down there that had been abandoned, and they were many. They would either be slaves, they would be prostitutes, or some of them would be killed. There's a letter we have found dated from the first, 1 BC. And it's a Roman general writing back to his family. His wife was expecting when he went off to war. So he writes her back and he says, I'll be home as soon as the war ends. And he says, and as far as the baby goes, if it is a boy, great. But if it's a girl, kill it. To them, children were objects. They were inconveniences. They were commodities. You may want them, you may not. So in the backdrop of that, Paul elevates our children. And Paul grabs this incredible truth from God, and that is they matter. Children matter. So the first words out of his mouth is, don't provoke them to anger. I know in the culture where you live, you can do whatever you want, but not in God's kingdom. God honors them. Jesus himself said, unless you become like a child, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. So children are honored. Can I just say to every parent in this room, your children will never be an interruption to your mission on this earth. They are your mission on this earth. If we don't get that kingdom right, if we don't get that mission right, the very plan of God for us to bridge from him to the next generation is gone. So they're not an interruption. The disciples thought they were. Remember the time where they were bringing children to Jesus, and the disciples said, hey, y'all stop bringing these little ones to Jesus. And Jesus said, forbid them not, suffer the little children to come. So I think one thing we need to understand, if you go out to eat in just a moment, and you go to the restaurant, and every server in there is washing down or cleaning the tables and cleaning the silverware and cleaning the glasses, and you're standing there for 30 minutes waiting on a table, you going to be upset with that? You're going to finally walk over and say, hey, I'm here. We've been here for about 20 minutes. Can you see what happens is that server has simply forgot the mission of that restaurant. The mission of that restaurant is not to wipe down tables. It's to serve customers. Your mission is not to go make a lot of money. Your mission is not to build a great career. Your mission is to raise a godly family, period. That's why God gave you children. So God elevates the child, and he says what? Don't provoke them. Let me tell you, the best clue for what he has in mind is in Colossians. Because in Colossians chapter 3, you have the same wording, except he switches out a word. And I'm going to read verse 21 of Colossians 3. Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged. So whatever provoke means, it's when the children are angry or they're discouraged. And this one is the one that intrigues me because, as I said in your notes, it's the word aphumosin, which means to lack spirit. Here's what I believe provoke means. It means to destroy the spirit in your child. Do you remember back in the day, James Dobson wrote a book called The Strong-Willed Child? How many of you ever read that book? The Strong-Willed Child. It's a great read. In that book, he differentiated between breaking the spirit and breaking the will. Parents are called to break the will, but never to break the spirit. What does that mean? When you crush the dreams of your children, when you take the life out of them by being over-demanding, too critical, verbally abusive. Oh, there are many ways today to provoke our children and to destroy the spirit God has put in them. I think it is better to understand the positive, and it'll make sense with the negative. What is the positive? He says, but you are to bring them up in the discipline and instruction in the Lord. So the positive kind of helps me to know what the provoke is about. Let's look at the positive. What is it? Bring them up. We'll take it phrase at a time. Bring them up. You know what that phrase is? That's one word. That is the same word for nourish in chapter 5 of Ephesians. The verse we read when we talked about husbands. Look at it. Verse 29 says this, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it. The same word for nourish is the same word for here. Bring them up means to nourish them. Nourish them. And that's connected to cherish. So I just interpret it this way. That means you just love them. And you look at them not as a commodity, not as an interruption, not as an inconvenience, not as an unplanned distraction. You look at them as your own body. That's what verse 29 says. You nourish and cherish your own body. Do the same with your children. Love them no matter what. We ask the question, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? We got two responses that are very, very, very interesting. And I want you to listen to two of our members as they say what they would do differently as they look back of their child raising and rearing days. Watch this.
This question really got me to thinking, and it took me to some enlightening places. And sure, I could have changed this or that. I could have worked less. We could have less busy schedules. I could have been more involved in their school, more quality time. But at the end of the day, through all the trials and the parenting missteps that I know I had, I have some really great kids. So, if I had to do it all over again, this is what I would tell my younger self. Worry less, trust God more, and enjoy the journey. They're His kids after all.
We have 3 children, one of whom struggled a lot from about the age of 13 to the age of 19, to the degree that he was running away, doing drugs, out on the street. We didn't know where he was. He ended up in juvenile detention. He ended up ultimately in jail when he was 19 years old. And when he was in jail is when he came face to face and knew that he had a Savior who loved him. Now, Jeremiah has graduated from Moody Bible Institute. He's graduated from Southern Seminary. He's getting ready to plant a church in Miami, in a more troubled kind of community where there's drugs, where there's prostitution, where there's poverty. But he is completely fearless because he's lived there. If I were to go back and do anything differently, it would be to remind myself of those truths and to not find myself discouraged and overwhelmed in despair. To know that because we love Him, because we honor Him, because we trust Him, He has a purpose. We can't see it, and we may never see everything that God has purposed here on this earth until we get to the other side. But what an absolute joy to see a little bit of what God has purposed through all of that very, very hard time in Jeremiah's life.
What's so cool about those 2, Debbie and Patty? They loved him no matter what. They cherished him. Even when they messed up, even when they made bad choices, they cherished him. I just think the first thing God tells you to do, love him, cherish him. I've got a question. There are 750 children in the state of Florida waiting for adoption. Who's going to cherish them? Who's going to nourish them? When I read this passage, I can't help but think about children that don't have that. It was God's plan. I mean, it's God's purpose. So maybe that's why true religion is defined in James as visiting the orphans and the widows in their distress. Maybe what God is saying is it's our responsibility as the body of Christ to cherish and to nourish those that have not been nourished by their family. 750 awaiting adoption. On August 24th, there's a Saturday conference called Wait No More. And I want to encourage every one of you to be a part. And you say, but Pastor, I'm not sure that we're in a place to adopt. It's not something, we're older, we're not going to adopt. It's not just for those who are going to adopt. It's for those who have a heart for the 750 in the state of Florida who aren't being cherished and nourished by somebody. We all have a part to play. And on that day, it's a conference where we'll hear about how we can be better as a church in reaching out and loving them. So parents, it starts with us nourishing and cherishing. And then that's what bringing up is. Then he says, in the discipline. What's discipline? It's the word padia. It basically means training. Now, when you and I use the word discipline, we usually talk about punishment. Okay? We usually talk about being beaten, and being literally just absolutely worn out. I remember moments of discipline. Well, discipline in the Bible was not just punishment. A lot of people, that's all they think of when they hear discipline. It wasn't just punishment. Punishment is about the past, something you did. Discipline in the Bible is about the future. It's about training. So discipline is best understood as the training that a parent is to give their children. It's really the focus on what you do, for your children, what you do with your children. That's the focus. In fact, the best analogy is training wheels. Any of you ever used training wheels when you were little? You remember the training wheels? Any of you still got them? You still riding with training wheels? No. Why? Because there comes a point you get rid of them. That's the role of the parent. Train. Because there comes a day where you're not there. You send them out. I mean, it's a perfect picture. Remember when you first got on your training wheels and you were doing fine, and then came that day when they took the training wheels off, but almost inevitably, a mom or dad would be walking alongside with their hand on your shoulder, right? And then they'd start running. And then the final moment would come. What would mom or dad do? They would let go. And you'd be riding. That is exactly a picture of what God has called the parents to do. Train. Show them the guardrails. Show them the way to go. Show them as best you can how you do it. And then let them go. I read a blogger that said the 2 mistakes we make in training our children. Number 1, we risk too little. We won't let them go. We won't let them make a decision. We won't let them experience or test their wings. We risk too little. The other thing, we rescue too quickly. You know what? I thought about that one. Isn't it typical for mom and daddy to come save the day? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? No, not always. Not what God did. Did God always come between his children's action and consequences? No. There's something you learn through consequences. There's something you learn when you take the training wheels off and you have a bike wreck. You learn not to do something again. There's learning in that. There's growth in that. Even God let his people be conquered by a pagan nation, Babylon. Remember, Jerusalem fell. It fell. And the Babylonians came in and took them all out of Jerusalem. Why did God do that? Could he have rescued? Sure. But he didn't. Why? When they came out of exile, they were never the same again. They learned something. So sometimes we do risk too little, and sometimes we rescue too quickly. The goal is to train them so that you can set them free to live out the lives God created them to live. Now, parents, remember, the greatest way to train is by doing it yourself. What you do is far more important than what you say. They're watching you. So the best way to train is just to live it. They're watching you. Did you hear the first video? One of the ones that spoke said they would come in from their paper route and see their mom on their knees. What an incredible way to teach prayer. I think it's one of the most powerful ways you watch your parents. Let me just show you a real silly example of this. When I'm standing around and I'm not really doing something, I'm busy, I tuck my little finger under my other fingers just like that. I mean, you'll catch me sometime just standing there. My kids do it all the time. They'll say, "Hey, Dad, you're doing it." I mean, I do that right there. The only other person on earth who does that was my dad. My dad used to do that all the time. Now, we did not have a session where he sat me down and said, "Okay, son, now I want to show you something. When you're just standing around, don't have anything to do, put your little finger right here." We never had that session. So where did I get that? I watched him when he didn't think I was looking. And there I am. I remember one day I was in the backyard working with a wrench trying to get a bolt, loose a nut off. And I'm so frustrated. And it kept slipping. I didn't have the right size or whatever. And I just took that wrench and I just threw it down. And I looked out the corner of my eye, and there was Andrew, our middle one. He had him a little toy tool belt with a wrench, and he threw that wrench down. And all of a sudden, like an arrow to the heart, I'm like, oh my goodness. They're watching. Listen to what this child wrote. This is a poem entitled, "When You Didn't Think I Was Watching." When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you hang my first painting on the refrigerator, and I immediately wanted to paint you another one. When you thought I wasn't looking, I heard you say a prayer, and I knew there was a God I could always talk to. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you make a meal and take it to a friend who was sick, and I learned that we can help one another. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears come from your eyes, and I learned that sometimes things hurt, but it's okay to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked at you and wanted to say, thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. You model it. and they get it. And the first step is the simple one. Just be there. Maybe this is elementary and maybe this is just unnecessary, but you know what? It's hard to parent long distance. Just be there. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7 says, teach the commands to your children when you sit with them in the house, when you walk with them by the way, when you lie down with them at night, when you rise up with them. Now that's a wonderful little verse for parents, but it makes one big assumption. It makes this assumption. It assumes you are in the house with them. It assumes you walk by the way with them. It assumes that you lie down with them and that you rise up with them. Long distance parenting never works. The first step is simply being there. Today, this afternoon, Tiger's got a big lead in this golf tournament. And you're going to watch a lot of putts today that will determine who wins in the final round. Did you know that on the PGA Tour today, a putt of 3 feet or less, 99% of the time, the golfers make them? 3 feet or less. So let's just find a place, okay? Let's say the middle of this platform is the hole. If I back up 3 feet, 99% of the time, they're going to make that putt. But if I back up 5 feet to a total of 8 feet, you know how much of the time they make it? 50% of the time. Only 5 feet more. What's the lesson? Distance matters. Distance matters. Parents, just be there. It's the first step. So we train. Then he says, in the instruction. That's the next phrase in verse 4. In the instruction. What does that mean? That's the verbal. That is literally from a word from which we get nouthetic counseling. The word nouthetic counseling. It's about spoken word. It's about giving counsel. It's about speaking into them. So literally it means not what we do, but what we say. And may I remind you that sometimes your actions speak so loud it's hard to hear what you're saying. Because you say one thing, and here's the classic line. Say it with me, parents. Do as I say, not as I do. We grew up learning that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Because they're watching. But your words matter. And your words bless. Did you know that tongue that you have right there in your mouth has the power to bless and the power to curse? How many of you today remember something a coach or a parent said to you when you were little that hurt and you remember to this day? Raise your hand. Wow. And the rest of you just don't have a good memory. I understand. I'm there. It's amazing how we remember. And so when you speak blessing into a child, when you say something to a child, they get it and they hang on to it. Oh my goodness, man, how many times have my words come back from one of my children? But Dad, you said this. There are 3 things that I think every child needs to hear. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry. I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm sorry. Now, Danny added a 4th one, take out the trash. So if you want a 4th one, you know, every kid needs to hear. Those three, think about it. We all need to hear that. And it's amazing what happens when we bless our children with our mouth, when we encourage them. This is what it's talking about. There's another part of this where it's talking about counsel. You know what I miss most about my dad being gone? It's the weirdest thing. You know what I miss most? I miss picking up the phone and calling him and saying, hey, Dad, I'm thinking about something. What do you think? What I miss most about my father-in-law, Rachel's father, Dr. Moore, he was a medical doctor. Let me tell you, if we had any little ache or pain, hey, Barry Lee, we got this little pain right here. I got this thing going on. And I remember after he died, something happened. One of us was having something. And I said, well, let's just... And I caught myself. You know what, parents? You always get to be there to give counsel. Instruction. Instruction. Now, what's the last phrase? In the Lord. You know what that means? It means nourish them in your training and in what you say to them in the Lord, meaning with His help and for His glory. With His help and for His glory. You don't do this alone. No parent in this room will do it alone. You do it with the help of the Lord, and you do it for His glory. And that's where you have the resources of heaven to come and help you do what you can't do in the flesh, and that is to be a godly parent. So let me close with this. What are you willing to do for your children? The whole idea today is how parents serve their children. What are you willing to do for your children? I know it's easy to talk about it, but let me show you something that forever challenged my love for my kids. I met this man and his son at a Promise Keepers event years ago in Dallas, Texas. Saw the video, part of this video you're going to see. I've never been the same as a father. Never been the same. Some of you that watch ESPN, did you watch the ESPY Awards? The ESPY Awards this year honored this man and his son. His name is Dick Hoyt. His son is Rick Hoyt. Honored them with the Jimmy V Award. Now, this father, 51 years ago, realized his son, Rick, had cerebral palsy. And the doctor said he'll never walk, he'll never run, he'll never do the things that other kids do. So this father realized that he had a challenge on his hand with a son that had very, very special needs. But all of a sudden, one day, he learned something. He took his son on a run. And the son was able to communicate, when I am with you running, it's the only time I don't feel handicapped. I feel normal. So you know what his dad did? What any dad would do. He started running with him. He has run 1,000 races with this boy. He has competed in the Ironman competition with this boy. And the city of Boston, where they call home, this year at the Boston Marathon, unveiled a bronze statue honoring the legacy of Dick and his son, Rick Hoyt. They were going to end it this year. The last marathon they would run, they were going to end it this year. And the bomb went off, and they were 2 miles short of the finish line. So they've made a commitment and made it there on ESPN at the ESPYs this year. They're going to come back next year, and they're going to run one more. Dads, moms, what are you willing to do for your kids? For those of you that have been blessed and you're a parent, we have the wonderful privilege of doing what God did for us. So what I want you to do is I want you to join me in a prayer time. And I want you parents, if you're able, just turn right now, get on your knees. Maybe your children are with you, but it doesn't matter. Any parent in the room, if you're able physically, I want you to get on your knees, and I'm going to join you right here. Let's just go to our knees for a moment. I want you first to thank God for the awesome privilege of being a parent. Just tell Him, thank you. And I want you to thank Him for your children. I want you to call their name out. Thank Him for each child. Call their name out. God, today, I thank you for Joshua, for Andrew, and for Hannah. I'm blessed. Now I want you to ask Him to make you a better parent like Him. Just ask Him. Just tell Him, I want to be a better parent. I want to be more like you. Now thank Him for being your Father. And tell Him what a great parent He is to you, His child. Would you make your way back to your seat? Just go ahead and take your seat again. To the parents in the room that feel like that this represents your family, I hope you're encouraged. Because there's so many resources and so many things that we want to do for you to help you, to give this to Him. This is it. You just say, God, I can't put it together. Would you put it back together for me? And it's amazing what God will do.